Hi, my name is Charles and this is Great Britain Nostalgia. In 1961, a widow in Coventry named Edith sat down to a hot dinner every single night of the week, spent less than 2 shillings doing it, washed 1 pot and never once felt sorry for herself. Today, a microwave meal for one costs £3.50, tastes of sodium and cardboard, and leaves you lonelier than you were before you opened the packet. Number 14 on this list was recommended by a Sheffield district nurse as practically medicinal. And number 1, the dish sitting at the top of this entire countdown, costs under £1 and takes 9 minutes flat. Number 15, tinned sardines with mustard mash. There is a version of this dish that costs 98 pence and a version that costs £1.12, depending on whether you buy own brand sardines or push the boat out to John West. Either way, you are eating better than most people managed on a Saturday night in 1954. The method is almost insultingly simple. 1 medium potato, peeled and cubed, goes into a small pan of salted water and boils for 8 minutes, while you open a tin of sardines and warm them gently in their own oil in a separate pan. That oil is not waste. That oil is flavor. Drain the potato, mash it with a knob of butter, a splash of the milk you have in the fridge and half a teaspoon of English mustard powder. Pile the sardines on top. Crack black pepper over everything. Sit down. In 1958, a tin of sardines cost 7 pence. The calcium from those soft little bones, the omega oils from the fish, the slow burning energy from the potato. District nurses across the Midlands actively encouraged elderly patients living alone to eat sardines twice a week. Not as a poverty measure, as a health measure. The nourishment to cost ratio was unbeatable then and it is unbeatable now. 1 pot, 1 tin, 1 plate, and a dinner that tastes of the sea and costs less than a bus fare. Number 14, egg and bacon in a cup. When I first came across this one in an old Women's Institute pamphlet from 1963, I was genuinely convinced it could not possibly be that good. I had to go verify it myself, and I am glad I did. A single rasher of back bacon, snipped into small pieces with kitchen scissors, goes into a small buttered ramekin or an oven-proof cup. 1 egg is cracked on top, a pinch of salt, a pinch of pepper, a tiny knob of butter dropped directly onto the yolk. The whole thing goes under a hot grill for 6 to 8 minutes until the white is set and the yolk still has a little give. Served with 2 slices of buttered toast and eaten at the kitchen table. This was what district nurses in Sheffield were reportedly serving up as a suggestion for elderly patients who struggled with standing at the stove. No pots, no frying, no spatula, no washing up beyond the cup and the grill pan. The bacon crisps at the edges where it touches the hot ceramic. The egg sets over it like a golden lid. You eat it with a small spoon, scooping bacon and egg onto your toast in equal measure. In 1963, a rasher of bacon cost about 3 pence and an egg cost less than 2. The whole dinner sat under 5 pence. Today you are looking at well under £1. This is the most underrated recipe on this entire list, and I will not be told otherwise. Number 13, cheese pudding. This sounds like a baked dish, and in its full Sunday version, it is. But the single-serving stovetop version your grandmother made on a Tuesday evening is something else entirely. And it cooks in under 10 minutes once you know the method. Grate a generous handful of mature cheddar into a small saucepan. Add a splash of milk, a beaten egg, a teaspoon of English mustard, and a few drops of Worcestershire sauce. Stir it continuously over the lowest heat you can manage. The egg and cheese fuse together into something thick, golden, and savoury that sits somewhere between a sauce and a pudding. Pour it over toast or spoon it into a bowl and eat it with bread alongside. In 1962, the ingredients for this dish cost less than a shilling and provided a complete evening meal with enough protein to see you through until morning. For those living alone on a fixed pension, the cheese pudding required no timing, no precise technique, and no standing over a hot oven. Just a small pan and patience. The Worcestershire sauce was the detail that separated a passable version from an extraordinary one. One bottle lasted months. It cost about 4p. Your nan knew exactly how many drops to use without measuring, because she had been using the same bottle since 1957. Number 12. Kipper with brown bread and butter. The kipper has a reputation problem in modern Britain that it absolutely does not deserve. Somewhere between the 1980s and now, it got labelled as difficult, smelly, and old-fashioned. All three of those criticisms are either wrong or irrelevant. A kipper bought from the supermarket in a boil-in-the-bag pouch takes exactly 7 minutes. You drop the sealed bag into boiling water, set a timer, pull it out, and cut it open. No smell in the kitchen beyond a brief, warm smokiness that is, honestly, quite pleasant. Slide the kipper onto a plate. Place 2 slices of brown bread and butter alongside. Squeeze half a lemon over the fish if you have one. Add a crack of black pepper. In 1955, a kipper from the fishmonger cost about 4p. They were eaten by working people across the north and Scotland as a serious dinner, not a side dish, not a curiosity. The smoked herring provided iron, protein, and vitamin D in quantities that made it one of the most nutritionally efficient meals available. A retired headmistress in Aberdeen recalled eating kipper and brown bread every Wednesday evening from 1958 through to 1982. She called it the most reliable meal she knew. 1 pot of boiling water, 1 bag, 1 plate, 24 years without a single failure. That is a recipe you can trust. Number 11. Pea soup with a ham bone end. Here is the thing about pea soup that the ready meal version never captures. The body, the weight of it, the way it coats the back of a spoon and fills the bowl like something substantial rather than something fluid. Split peas need no soaking if you use red lentils instead, and your grandmother would have used whichever was cheapest that week. A 1/4 cup of dried red lentils into a small saucepan with enough water or stock to cover by 2 inches. Half a small onion, diced roughly, a knob of butter, a pinch of salt. Bring to the boil, turn down, and simmer for 8 minutes. While it simmers, stir occasionally. The lentils collapse and thicken the liquid without any blending required. If you have the end of a ham joint, even a scraping of leftover ham from a packet bought the day before, it goes in now. Taste it. Adjust the salt. Tear a chunk of bread and sit down. In 1958, a pound of split peas cost 6p, enough for 6 or 7 bowls of soup. For elderly people managing on a state pension, pea soup was not deprivation. It was strategy, hot, filling, cheap, and requiring nothing of tired hands or aching legs beyond 10 minutes of gentle attention. The ham end was often free from the butcher, who gave away bones to regular customers without being asked twice. Number 10. Corned beef fritters. Right. Anyone who tells you corned beef is not a legitimate ingredient for a proper dinner has never eaten a fritter hot from the pan with a smear of brown sauce and a cup of strong tea. I will die on this hill. 1/3 of a tin of corned beef, roughly chopped into small cubes. Mix with 2 tablespoons of plain flour, 1 beaten egg, and a pinch of black pepper to form a rough batter that holds together when pressed. Drop spoonfuls into a frying pan with a little oil and press them flat. 2 to 3 minutes each side over medium heat until a dark crust forms. Serve with a shake of HP sauce. In 1956, a tin of corned beef cost 1 shilling and 4p. Divided into 3 portions, each serving cost less than 6p. The blue and yellow tin was as familiar in British kitchens as the kettle. For elderly people living alone, corned beef fritters offered something crucially important beyond nutrition. They required no knife skills, no precise timing, no hovering over a hot oven, a fork and a frying pan, and 10 minutes of attention. The fritters were forgiving in a way that most dinners are not. Press them too flat, they still work. Leave them slightly too long, the extra crust is better anyway. This was a meal designed, without knowing it, to accommodate the reality of cooking alone when your confidence is not always as steady as it used to be. Number 9. Potted meat on toast with a fried egg. Potted meat was the sandwich paste's more serious cousin, and in the 1950s and 60s, it sat in the cold larder of every household that knew anything about preserving flavor without refrigeration. Shredded cooked beef or pork, pressed into a small pot and sealed under a layer of clarified butter, could sit for days and be called upon whenever dinner was needed quickly. Your grandmother may not have made her own. By the 1960s, Chipam's and similar brands had made commercial potted meat widely available for about 12 pence a jar. The trick she used, and the reason this counts as a dinner rather than a snack, was the fried egg. Toast 2 slices of bread. Spread potted meat generously across both. Fry 1 egg in a small pan until the white is set, and the edges are just beginning to crisp and brown. Lay it across the toast. Break the yolk. The richness of the egg mingles with the deep, slightly gelatinous flavor of the potted meat. Salt, pepper, and that is your dinner. Under 10 minutes, under £1, eaten by men and women across the industrial north for a century before anyone thought to put it on a menu, and charge £7.50 for it. 1 pan, 1 pot, 1 plate. Maximum return on minimal effort. Number 8. Welsh rarebit done properly. I have to be honest about something here. I grew up in a household where Welsh rarebit was made wrong every single time, and I ate it gratefully for 20 years without knowing what I was missing. My mum, God love her, melted cheese on toast under the grill and called it rarebit. It is not rarebit, it is cheese on toast. Both are excellent, they are not the same thing. Proper Welsh rarebit, the single-serving version made in 1 small saucepan in under 10 minutes, involves melting a generous handful of grated mature cheddar with a splash of milk, a beaten egg yolk, a heaped teaspoon of English mustard, a few drops of Worcestershire sauce, and if you have it, a tablespoon of dark ale or stout. Stir over low heat until the mixture becomes thick, glossy, and uniform. Pour over toast. Grill until golden and bubbling. I actually called my mum after learning the proper method because I knew she had lived through exactly this moment in history, and I wanted to know if she had ever been taught the right way. She had not. Neither had her mother, apparently. But somewhere in Wales, in 1962, women were making this correctly and serving it as a complete evening meal that cost less than £1 and tasted like something from a restaurant. In 1962, the ingredients cost under £1 per person. Today, you are paying pennies. The ale is optional. The mustard is not. Number 7. Macaroni. Cheese for 1, from scratch. The jarred sauce version does not deserve to share a name with this. I am sorry. It just does not. A single serving of macaroni, roughly 2 handfuls into a small pot of salted boiling water. Cook for 7 minutes. While it cooks, grate a fistful of cheese. Drain the macaroni. Return it to the warm pot, off the heat now. Add a knob of butter, a splash of milk, the grated cheese, a 1/4 teaspoon of mustard powder, and a pinch of white pepper. Stir until the cheese melts into a sauce that clings to every piece of pasta. Tip into a bowl. Eat immediately. No bechamel. No oven. No second pot. The residual heat of the pan and the pasta does the work for you. In 1958, a portion of homemade macaroni cheese cost under 9 pence. The ready meal version, when it eventually appeared in the 1980s, cost 8 times as much and tasted of nothing but salt and disappointment. Your grandmother would have recognized the ready meal as a con. She would have looked at the ingredient list and the price and shaken her head slowly, the way she did when something that should have been simple had been made needlessly complicated in order to charge more money for it. She would have been absolutely right. Number 6. Smoked haddock in milk. This is, I will say it plainly, one of the most quietly beautiful things you can make in a single pan in under 10 minutes. It requires almost no skill, it produces almost no washing up, and it tastes like something a good hotel would serve for 3 times. what it cost you to make at home. A piece of smoked haddock, undyed if you can find it, into a small frying pan. Cover with milk, just enough to come halfway up the fish. A bay leaf, if you have one, a few peppercorns, a knob of butter. Bring to a gentle simmer over medium heat. 7 minutes. The fish will flake at a touch when it is done. Lift it carefully onto a plate. Spoon some of the warm, lightly smoky milk over it. Serve with a slice of brown bread. In 1955, smoked haddock cost 1 shilling a pound at the fishmonger. A small piece, 2 ounces, was enough for one. The dish asked for attention, but not difficulty. The flavors were gentle, suitable for those whose appetite had quieted with age, whose digestion preferred something soft and warm rather than rich and heavy. The milk absorbs the smoke from the fish as it heats. What you are left with is a liquid somewhere between a light sauce and a very good broth. Do not waste it. Drink it from the pan with a spoon when no one is watching. Your nan did. Number 5. Bubble and squeak cake with a poached egg. Bubble and squeak in its full family version is a Monday tradition made from the leftover potato and cabbage from Sunday's roast. But the single serving version, made fresh from scratch, is a different creature entirely, and it cooks in under 10 minutes if you approach it correctly. 1 medium potato, grated raw on a box grater. A handful of leftover or quickly blanched cabbage or Brussels sprout, shredded fine. Salt, pepper, and a tablespoon of plain flour to bind. Form it into a rough patty about the size of your palm and press it flat. Into a frying pan with a little oil or butter over medium-high heat. 4 minutes each side without touching it, letting the crust form properly. While the second side cooks, poach an egg in a small pan of water with a splash of vinegar. Lay the egg on top of the cake when both are ready. In 1956, this dish cost practically nothing. The potato and cabbage were often already in the kitchen. The egg was from the dozen bought on Monday. A retired teacher in Swansea recalled making bubble and squeak cake every Friday evening through the 1960s. Always with an egg on top, always with a mug of tea alongside. She said it was the meal that made Friday feel different from the rest of the week. Not a treat exactly, just something that felt deliberate. Like a small ceremony at the end of things. Number 4. Lentil and bacon broth. Red lentils were your grandmother's secret weapon, and I am prepared to argue that they remain one of the most undervalued ingredients in any British kitchen today. Unlike dried beans, they need no soaking. They cook in 20 minutes, and in a stripped-down, single-serving broth, they are essentially done in 10 if you start them in hot stock rather than cold water. 1 rasher of back bacon, snipped small and fried in the bottom of a saucepan until just crisp. 1 small onion, or half a large one, diced and added to the bacon fat. 2 minutes of softening. Then a 1/4 cup of red lentils, a pint of water or stock, a pinch of cumin if you have it, salt and pepper. Hard boil for 2 minutes, then lower the heat and cook for 8 more. The lentils dissolve into the broth as it thickens. The bacon floats through it in small smoky pieces. In 1958, a pound of red lentils cost 6 pence. A single rasher of bacon cost 3 pence. The total cost per portion was perhaps 4 pence. District nurses in Manchester distributed handwritten copies of this recipe throughout the 1960s to elderly patients on limited budgets. The protein from the lentils, the fat from the bacon, the warmth of the broth. It was, as one nurse was recorded saying, in an oral history project from 1974, medicine in a bowl. She meant it literally. Number 3, deviled kidneys on toast. This is the part where every single time I tell this story, I get goosebumps, and I've told it probably 100 times. Not because deviled kidneys are dramatic, but because of what they represent. In the Victorian and Edwardian eras, deviled kidneys were a breakfast dish served at country house tables. By 1960, they had migrated to the single burner stoves of retired workers' bedsits across industrial Britain. costing a few pence and cooking in 7 minutes. The same dish, two completely different worlds, both versions equally confident in what they were. 2 lamb's kidneys, halved and the white core removed with scissors, into a hot pan with a knob of butter, 2 minutes each side. Then into the pan, a teaspoon of English mustard, a teaspoon of Worcestershire sauce, a pinch of cayenne pepper and a splash of water to make a rough sauce. Stir around the kidneys for 1 more minute. Pile onto hot buttered toast. In 1962, a pair of lamb's kidneys cost about 4 pence from the butcher. They were considered offal, which in those days meant inexpensive rather than unfashionable. Your grandmother bought them without embarrassment because she understood that inexpensive and inferior were not the same thing. The mustard heat, the savoury depth of the Worcestershire, the slight gaminess of the kidney cut through with butter. This is a 10-minute dinner that has been eaten by every class of British society for 150 years, and if that does not earn it the number 3 spot, I do not know what does. Number 2. Tomato and onion hot pot. Before you skip this one, because it sounds too simple, I want you to hear me out, because the simplest recipes are almost always the ones that demand the most respect. And this one in particular has a history that earns it the 2nd spot on this list without any argument. 1 medium onion sliced into half rings into a small pan with a knob of butter and a pinch of salt. Cook over medium heat for 4 minutes until soft and beginning to turn golden at the edges. Add 1 tin of chopped tomatoes, half a teaspoon of sugar to cut the acid, a pinch of dried thyme, salt and black pepper. Simmer for 5 minutes until thick. Serve in a bowl with bread for mopping or over mashed potato if you have a few extra minutes. In 1955, a tin of tomatoes cost about 8 pence. An onion cost perhaps a penny. This was the dish that appeared on kitchen tables across working-class Britain, on the nights when the budget had been stretched as far as it could go, and there was still supper to find from somewhere. It was not a sad dish. It was a warm one. It was the smell of onions softening in butter, which is one of the most fundamentally comforting smells a kitchen can produce, combined with the sharp sweetness of tomato and the satisfaction of bread dragged through a thick, fragrant sauce. 1 pot, under a pound, under 10 minutes, eaten by millions and forgotten by almost all of them. Number 1, braised liver with onion gravy. Here it is, and before anyone clicks away, I need you to give me 30 seconds because I understand the instinct. Liver has been maligned by British food culture since the 1980s, with a ferocity that is, honestly, completely unjustified. It is time to correct the record. 1 or 2 slices of lamb's liver, perhaps 3 ounces in total, dusted in a small amount of seasoned plain flour. 1 small onion, sliced thin. The onion goes into a pan with butter over medium heat and cooks for 3 minutes until soft. The liver goes in alongside and cooks for 2 minutes each side. No more, or it toughens into something that deserves every bad word ever said about it. A splash of water or stock into the pan, scraping up the floury residue from the bottom, along with a teaspoon of Worcestershire sauce and a pinch of dried thyme. Stir for 1 minute until a thin glossy gravy forms around the meat. Serve over mashed potato or with bread and butter. In 1955, liver cost 9 pence a pound. A portion for 1 cost perhaps 2 pence. And for those 2 pence, you were eating one of the most nutritionally dense foods available to any person in any kitchen in any decade. Iron, vitamin B12, protein, folate. The vitamins in a single serving of lamb's liver would have kept a district nurse quietly satisfied for an entire shift. This is the number 1 dish on this list, not because it is the fastest, though it is under 10 minutes. Not because it is the cheapest, though it is among the cheapest. It is number 1 because it represents everything I set out to talk about when I started making this channel. It is a dish that was eaten with confidence and skill and no apology whatsoever by generations of British people who understood that cheap did not mean lesser, that simple did not mean inferior, that eating alone did not mean eating badly. braised liver with onion gravy was not a last resort, it was a first choice. And somewhere along the way, we forgot that. I want to close with something, and I'm going to be direct about it. The 15 dinners on this list were not forgotten by accident. They were replaced by an industry that needed you to believe you could not feed yourself properly without their help. Replaced by a culture that decided single portion cooking was either embarrassing or impossible. Replaced by the slow, quiet disappearance of the confidence that your grandmother carried into her kitchen every evening, as naturally as she carried her shopping bag home from the market. That confidence is not gone. It has been waiting in old pamphlets and regional archives, in oral history recordings from the 1970s, in the handwritten recipe cards that turn up in house clearances and charity shop cookbooks, tucked between pages of things nobody makes anymore. I have been sitting on this particular list for 6 months because I wanted to make sure I got every detail right before sharing it with you. The prices, the years, the districts where these recipes were taught and passed around and kept alive by district nurses and Women's Institute members and widows, cooking alone in bedsits in cities that have mostly changed beyond recognition. Every detail matters, because every detail is a reminder that the people who made these dinners were not making do. They were making something. Something warm, something nourishing, something theirs. Try one this week. The liver and onion gravy. The Welsh rarebit done properly. The smoked haddock in milk, just one, 10 minutes, under £1, and come back and tell me whether your grandmother was right. I already know the answer, but I want to hear you say it.